I know what you're thinking. Oh no, he's back. Previously, we discussed how attacking in squad is unlike in other FPS games. It's much more challenging to simultaneously move and shoot, requiring more teamwork to conduct successful offensives. We borrowed from real-world tactics and theory to create a framework for fire and maneuver in squad, and we covered how to play the machine gun and marksman kits in the support element. Today, I'll explain the assault side of the equation by explaining the difference between fire and maneuver versus fire and movement, laying out the 3 phases of the attack, providing some important gameplay principles to apply in each phase, and then how to play the Grenadier and Rifleman kits. I will leverage my real-world knowledge of infantry tactics and my knowledge of squad to explain some concepts and translate them to the game in a useful way. Ultimately, I want squad to have a vibrant community willing to work together as a team, exchange thoughts and ideas, and to help new players learn. It's a long journey ahead of us, but my goal is that this video contributes to that vision. The concept of tactics seems to be lost on a lot of squad players. It's not uncommon to see them do nothing but sprint in a straight line from a hab directly towards the objective, only to die, respawn, and repeat. They are called the Shift W attackers. Despite many squad players tossing teamwork and tactics to the wind, I think it's fair to say that many understand the fundamentals of fire and movement. But that's not enough. Let me explain. Alright, so we're back in Pacific Proving Grounds. We're trying to attack this helipad right here. The stereotypical advanced squad attack consists of the following. Somebody will recognize that the assault element needs supporting suppression, so they'll either stay back here and provide it themselves, or they'll say, guys, I'm moving up, cover me, and they'll ask for the suppression. Others will perceive, hey, this is out in the open, we need to break the enemy's line of sight, and they'll start throwing smoke grenades like this. The assault element will move up under this smoke and suppressive fire. I call this the advanced Shift W attack because it's better than a bunch of players just pressing Shift W to sprint onto the objective, but it's still a bunch of players running forward in a straight line, just in a slightly more advanced way. You will have seen this scenario a lot of times in squad, and you will also know that this doesn't work. There's a time and place for frontal assaults, but the reason why this method often struggles to succeed lies in the difference between fire and movement versus fire and maneuver. Fire and movement is what you do when you alternate moving and shooting between 2 elements while traveling in a direction. An example of this is bounding Overwatch. It's a movement technique used to get a group of guys from point A to point B with more security at the cost of being slower. Fire and maneuver is when you combine firing elements and moving elements into an orchestrated tactical play that gains a positional advantage against the enemy. Movement techniques are only one tool that are used within fire and maneuver. The problem with the advanced Shift W attack I described earlier is that those players are only using fire and movement to drive directly from starting point A to objective B and nothing else. An ideal attack using fire and maneuver needs to gain a positional advantage before conducting a final assault. So this rock outcrop here has a good flanking position that's covered against that helipad. We look on the map here, we can see instead of moving in a straight line, we can get a fire team around here to this location where they can flank the enemy. So in this flanking process, we could use fire and movement to take turns bounding to the side and advancing to this rock outcropping here. You can see once we arrive at this rock outcropping that we have a positional advantage because we would have the enemy's flank from this position, while they would also, the enemy would have to deal with our friendlies over there at our starting position. So now that we have a positional advantage on the enemy's flank, we can start using fire and movement and buddy team rushes to assault into the enemy and then do things like chuck grenades into their faces. From the perspective of the assault element, we can break down the ideal attack into 3 phases. These 3 phases are the approach phase, the assault phase, and the fight through phase. Each phase has key concepts that need to be applied to have the best chance of success. The moment you find the enemy and a firefight begins, it's very tempting to jump straight into the assault. This is why the advanced Shift W attack is so prevalent. But this is a bad habit that results in a grueling fight against an enemy that knows you're coming and where you're coming from. A good assault element needs to use fire and maneuver to set itself up for success by first conducting the approach phase of the attack. In this phase, the assault element of the squad stops shooting, moves to a flank, and does so with concealed and covered avenues of approach. The key objective of the approach phase is to maneuver the assault element onto the enemy's flank. Using the flank to attack gives you 4 enormous benefits. It prevents you from being predictable and easily killable. It can give you an element of surprise if you're undetected. It puts the enemy in a crossfire between you and the support element. Finally, flanking has a colossal psychological impact on the enemy. A lot of players in squad will get confused and overwhelmed when attacked from more than one direction, and most squads will buckle in the face of such pressure. Flanking should be a perpetual habit and the first thing you go for in every firefight in squad. Use the flank and fire and maneuver. Using the flank is all well and good, but first, you need to get there and get there alive during the approach phase to use all of its advantages. You cannot rely solely on your support element's suppression to protect you in this phase because as great as suppression is, it's not a shield that magically stops bullets from hitting you. What can be a shield is cover and concealment. One of the best sources of cover and concealment during the approach phase is defilade, also known as dead ground. To be in a defilade is to be in an area that cannot be directly seen or shot by the enemy, such as in a ditch or behind a wall. The assault element should always aim to use routes that are protected by cover and concealment, like defilades, to maneuver onto the enemy's flank during the approach phase. Once the assault element has successfully arrived on the flank of the enemy, it's time for them to push the enemy's vulnerable flank. This is the assault phase, where you use fire and movement to advance on the enemy, intending to destroy them. As you assault the objective, there are 3 things to remember in squad: stamina management, assault fires, and blowing stuff up. With the new Infantry Combat Overhaul mechanics, you get a lot of benefits or detriments depending on your character's stamina level. Lower stamina leads to more weapon sway, parallax, and slower jogging speed when you hold shift. High stamina gives you a more stable shooting platform and a faster sprint speed. For the assault element, stamina is one of the most precious resources to manage. A good rule of thumb is to keep your stamina bar in the white, or rarely, at least in the yellow. To do this, you need to accustom yourself to slower and more patient advances than in Legacy Squad. Sprinting should be for quickly crossing exposed areas where you are vulnerable. You should conduct fast dashes from cover to cover with walking or pauses in between to recover that spent stamina. Sometimes it's necessary to expend more stamina to cover longer distances. Use your judgment based on the situation. The idea, though, is to pick your sprints instead of shift moving all the time as a default state of movement. This lends itself very well to using fire and movement techniques such as buddy team rushes, where you alternate running and shooting with a partner. If you're on the move and you need to shoot a target, it's vital that you stabilize your dispersion indicator first to fire accurate shots. This can be accomplished by following this simple mantra: stop, crouch, bang. This technique, combined with proper stamina management, will minimize the adverse effects of weapon sway and parallax on your shooting. A quick note: your stamina recovers faster when you are crouched, stationary, and not ADS'd. As you advance on the enemy, you will eventually reach a point where you still need to move up, but you're very close to the enemy. At this close range, it's no longer practical for you to rely on your support element or even fire and movement with the buddy to suppress the enemy for you. Coming across an unexpected enemy at this close range can leave you with no choice but to shoot while moving simultaneously. That is called assault fires. The goal of assault fires isn't so much to kill the enemy as it is for you to suppress him while you move to a better position. It is a defensive measure. For assault fires, don't aim down sight. Hip fire as you move to maximize mobility. You can then refocus on destroying the enemy once you've reached a safe location and reset the fight. Alright, so enough of this talk about movement and suppressing. How do you actually kill the bad guys? To answer this question, let me explain one piece of real-world theory. Until now, we have focused on shooting as a support role to help other guys maneuver. That is called support by fire. However, fires can be a very effective way to destroy the enemy from a distance, especially with high explosives. That is called attack by fire. Rather than painstakingly moving right on top of the enemy and then clearing them out in high-stakes close combat, an ideal assault clears out as much of the enemy as possible by blowing them up first, by using tools such as high-explosive RPG rockets, grenade launchers, and hand grenades. It's even valid for your entire squad attack to revolve around getting your assault element into an attack by fire position with the help of the support element. While the ultimate goal is for your high explosives to kill the enemy, they also have the best suppressive effects in squad, giving them a strong secondary support capability. Ideally, your assault element merely mops up the survivors of your high explosive attacks, but at the very least, the assault element will be able to exploit an enemy that has been heavily suppressed or wounded by the power of your explosives, giving them an advantage during the next and final phase of the attack, the fight through phase. No matter how much you've hammered the enemy with high explosives, eventually you will still have to physically clear out the enemy and occupy the objective. That process is the fight through phase of the attack, when you are clearing rooms, sweeping forests, and securing hilltops. Even in the fight through phase of the attack, your best option for killing the enemy is to blow him up. In close quarters, the ideal weapon to do so is the hand grenade. Even if your grenade does not kill the enemy, it can give you an advantage by suppressing or wounding him before you push. However, never assume that your grenade finished the job. Always have your gun ready to deal with potential survivors. When clearing objectives with your gun, one of the most vital skills to master is point fire. Point fire is just Squad 6.0's new name for what most FPS games call hip fire. Post ICO, magnified optics are more unwieldy, have blurred peripheral vision, and have slower ADS time when compared to red dots and iron sights. That means practicing accurate point fire is crucial for kits and squad equipped with magnified optics during close-in fights. The key to success is to remember to aim with the barrel of your rifle, not the middle of your screen. If your character lowers his weapon, you can double right-click your mouse to raise it back to the ready position. Alternatively, using red dot and iron sights is a strong choice, especially if your squad already has a solid composition of longer ranged kits. And don't forget, use cover, flank the enemy, manage your stamina, and work with your teammates to maintain 360-degree security while fighting in CQB. Now I'm going to talk about the Grenadier kit. Most people think of the Grenadier as a fire support kit, and Squad classifies it as such in the kit selection menu. But the Grenadier has a pivotal role to play as part of the assault element in Squad. In this section, I will explain the kit's strengths and weaknesses, its role in the game of Squad, and how to utilize it effectively. The Grenadier is a very well-rounded kit with almost no glaring weaknesses. Its strengths include that it can fire high explosive grenades from up to 250 to 400 meters away. It can also launch smoke grenades to block enemy lines of sight from a distance. All of this while it keeps a standard issue carbine or rifle as a versatile primary weapon. The cost is that it does not have any hand-thrown fragmentation or smoke grenades, and that the launcher has a minimum arming distance of 10 meters. However, the grenade launcher is still very useful in close quarters beyond that 10-meter minimum range. Overall, Grenadiers are best from a distance, with enough flexibility to fight effectively in close quarters. Let's think back to what we've covered in this video with the concepts of the assault phase, attack by fire, defilade, and even area targets from our last discussion video. Based on this, you may have already figured out the role of the Grenadier kit in Squad. First, it is suited for attack by fire during the assault phase of the attack. Yes, the Grenadier can also be with the support element due to its long long range and the high suppression of its explosive grenades. But remember that good suppression is sustainable, and a Grenadier only has limited rounds to shoot at the enemy. In addition, only one Grenadier kit is available per squad. Because of this, I think that the Grenadier is best in the assault element, where it can destroy things by blowing them up. Unlike most other infantry weapons, the grenade launcher is also capable of engaging area targets and targets that are in defilade with its high explosive rounds and arced trajectory. In short, the Grenadier is a rifleman specialized for longer ranges by replacing the latter's hand-thrown fragmentation and smoke grenades with the grenade launcher and its equivalents, and as a result, the Grenadier excels in the assault phase of the attack. It is weaker in CQB, but it remains versatile enough to serve as a rifleman in the fight-through phase of the attack. Before continuing, I'd like to point out that a lot of factions, like the Russians and irregular militia force, have kits equipped with RPGs with an option for high-explosive fragmentation rockets. Consider these to fill the same role as the Grenadier kit, except they have a longer effective range and a bigger boom. The key to making the most of them is to use fire and maneuver to position them in an ideal attack by fire position, where they can destroy the enemy. Once they expend their rockets, they can then participate in the fight-through phase as normal riflemen. Having described the Grenadier kit, the role of the Rifleman kit should be pretty intuitive. Being equipped with hand-thrown grenades and smoke grenades, it's suited for shorter-ranged fights and excels during the fight-through phase of the attack. The Rifleman is the CQB guy who uses his hand grenades and his rifle to clear areas like buildings and wood lines. Does that mean that you should only use the red dot and iron sight equipped Rifleman to specialize in CQB? No. In this video, we're only looking at the Rifleman through the lens of their role in the assault. The Rifleman also has an important support role to fill with its ammo bag to resupply squad mates like lats, medics, and squad leaders. In addition, the Rifleman's strength is versatility, not specialization, making a degree of flexibility valuable for the kit. Red dots or iron sights are a strong choice for the Rifleman, but they're not the only choice. Magnified optics are excellent to enable longer ranged capabilities that are almost marksman-like and are my personal preference. I have a question for you. How many grenades does a Rifleman kit carry? If you answered between 1 and 3, then you're wrong. The Rifleman's ammo bag holds a total of 100 ammunition. One fragmentation grenade costs 10 ammo from this bag, meaning that every Rifleman carries 10 fragmentation grenades in addition to their basic kit loadout. That is extremely powerful. And when fighting with your rifle, remember that you have a variety of tools you can employ. The principle of stop, crouch, bang works very well when you need to get accurate shots on target. Point fire is very fast and reasonably accurate at ranges within 10 meters. Assault fires is your personal suppression tool to help you cross vulnerable areas and make it into cover. In this video, I explained to you the difference between fire and movement versus fire and maneuver. Then I laid out the 3 phases of the attack to explain how the assault element should maneuver and fight in squad, and also how the Grenadier and Rifleman kits fit within the assault element. My goal is that this information helps players to be better team players and be equipped to exercise their personal initiative to utilize sound tactics in squad. There was a lot of information here, and applying it in a computer game like Squad can feel kind of impractical. Here's some shorthand to help you remember. Remember the 3 F's of attacking: find, fix, and finish. Always strive to finish the enemy from the flank, and always aim to blow up the enemy before you fight him face to face. Ultimately, your problem-solving skills, adaptability, and ability to apply practical solutions in-game matters the most. Consider this video as a common framework and a starting point for effective tactics in-game rather than as a Bible. Chances are you have some opinions about what I've said here, so let me know your thoughts down below. Don't be shy. Also, share your thoughts on what may be the biggest challenges facing infantry players in Squad since the 6.0 update. I may cover one of your suggestions in a future discussion. See you later.